Sarah Martinez stood at the entrance of the Naval Special Warfare Training Compound in Coronado, California, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder. At 24 years old, she was one of only 3 women in a class of 60 SEAL candidates. The morning sun beat down on the concrete as she watched her fellow cadets gather near the obstacle course. She'd worked 2 years to get here, 2 years of swimming until her shoulders burned, running until her lungs felt like fire, lifting weights until her hands bled. Sarah had grown up in a small town in Texas, the daughter of a Marine who taught her that strength wasn't just about muscle. It was about heart. "Well, well, look what we got here," a voice called out. A tall man with broad shoulders and a cocky smile approached. His name tag read Dawson. Behind him, 3 other cadets followed, smirking. Didn't know they were letting girls play soldier now. Sarah set down her bag carefully. "I'm not playing anything." "Sure you're not, sweetheart," another one said. This was Martinez, no relation, a guy from New York with arms like tree trunks. "You know what the dropout rate is for women in this program? 100%. Every single one quits." "Then I'll be the first who doesn't," Sarah said calmly. The men laughed. Dawson stepped closer, invading her space. "You think you're tough, you think you can hang with us." "I know I can." "Prove it," Dawson said. He gestured toward the mess hall. "It's almost lunchtime. Why don't you go get us some food? Make yourself useful." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm not your server, I'm your equal." The laughter grew louder. Other cadets were watching now, forming a loose circle around them. Sarah felt her heart pounding, but she'd learned long ago not to show fear. Her father had been right. Bullies fed on fear like sharks on blood. "Equal?" Martinez scoffed. "Lady, you probably can't even do 10 pull-ups." "50?" Sarah said quietly. "I can do 50. 50 pull-ups." Dawson's eyes widened in mock surprise. "Well, then you definitely need to prove that, but first." He glanced at his buddies and Sarah saw something shift in their expressions, something mean. "First, let's see how tough you really are." Before she could react, Dawson shoved her backward. Sarah stumbled but caught herself. Her hands balled into fists, but she forced them open. She couldn't afford to throw the first punch. Not on day one. Not when they were looking for any excuse to say she didn't belong. "What's wrong?" Dawson taunted. "Gonna cry, gonna quit already." "I don't quit," Sarah said, her voice like steel. "We'll see about that." The other cadets pushed closer, forming a tighter circle. Sarah's mind raced. She'd faced harassment before, in high school, in college, in basic training. But this felt different, more dangerous. These weren't just bullies. These were men who would be her teammates, her brothers in arms. If she couldn't earn their respect now, the next 6 months would be hell. "Food's on the table," Dawson suddenly announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. It was the dinner call, the signal that lunch was ready. But instead of heading to the mess hall, he turned back to Sarah with a cruel smile. "But you don't eat until you've earned it." The crowd of cadets began to disperse, heading toward the mess hall. But Dawson and his 3 friends remained. They circled Sarah like wolves around wounded prey. "Here's how this works," Dawson said. "You want to be one of us. You want to be a SEAL, then you fight for it, right here, right now." Sarah's father had taught her many things. He taught her how to shoot, how to run, how to survive. But he'd also taught her when to fight and when to wait. She looked at the 4 men surrounding her and calculated her odds. She was strong, well-trained, and determined. But 4 against 1, especially 4 men who outweighed her by 50 pounds each, was suicide. "I'm not fighting you," she said. "Not like this." "Then you're a coward," Martinez spat. "No," Sarah said, meeting his eyes. "I'm smart, and smart beats strong every single time." Dawson's face flushed red. "You think you're better than us." "I think I'm different than you, and that scares you." The words hung in the air like a challenge. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Dawson lunged forward and grabbed Sarah by her shirt, yanking her toward him. His breath was hot on her face. "You just made a big mistake, girl." Sarah didn't flinch. She looked him dead in the eye and smiled. "No, you did." Dawson's grip tightened on Sarah's shirt. The other three cadets moved closer, their intentions clear. They were going to make an example of her, show everyone what happened when someone didn't know their place. "Last chance," Dawson growled. "Walk away, go back to wherever you came from. Tell them you weren't cut out for this." Sarah's voice was steady. "I was cut out for this before you even knew what a SEAL was." The words struck a nerve. Dawson's face contorted with rage, and he shoved Sarah hard. She fell backward, hitting the concrete with enough force to knock the wind from her lungs. Pain shot through her shoulders and back. The four men stood over her, triumphant. Other cadets had stopped to watch from a distance, but nobody intervened. This was the law of the training ground. You either proved yourself or you washed out. Sarah lay there for a moment, catching her breath. Every instinct screamed at her to get up swinging, to fight back with everything she had. But her father's voice echoed in her mind. "Pick your battles, Mija. Sometimes the smartest fight is the one you don't have today." She slowly got to her feet, dusting off her uniform. Her back ached, but she didn't let it show. She looked at each of the four men, memorizing their faces. "You done?" Dawson asked. "Or do you need another lesson?" "I'm done," Sarah said quietly, "for now." She picked up her duffel bag and walked toward the barracks, ignoring the snickers and whispers around her. Each step hurt, but she kept her head high. Behind her, she heard Dawson's voice, loud and mocking. "That's right, run away, little girl." Sarah didn't look back. In the barracks, she found her assigned bunk and sat down heavily. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally catching up with her. She'd been in fights before, but this was different. This was personal. These men didn't just want her to fail, they wanted to break her. The door opened, and a woman walked in. She was older, maybe 35, with close-cropped hair and eyes that had seen things. Her uniform identified her as Lieutenant Commander Rebecca Chen. "Martinez," Chen said, her voice carrying authority. "On your feet." Sarah stood immediately, wincing as her back protested. Chen's eyes narrowed. "What happened out there?" "Nothing, ma'am, just getting to know my classmates." "Don't lie to me, cadet. I've been doing this for 15 years. I know what getting to know your classmates looks like, and that wasn't it." Sarah met her gaze. "With all due respect, ma'am, I can handle it." Chen studied her for a long moment. "I'm sure you can, but you shouldn't have to. Those men out there, Dawson, Martinez, Cooper, and Hayes, they've been washing out female candidates for 3 classes straight. They think it's their God-given right to keep women out of the teams. Why don't you stop them?" "Because I can't be there every second of every day. And because if I fight your battles for you, you'll never earn their respect. They'll just say you got special treatment." Chen's expression softened slightly. "But I can tell you this, those 4 are bullies, but they're also cowards, and cowards always make mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" "The kind that come from underestimating their opponent." Chen moved toward the door, then paused. "You know why I'm here, Martinez. Why I'm the only female officer in this entire compound." "No, ma'am." "Because I waited, I watched, I learned. And when the time was right, I showed them exactly what they'd been underestimating." She looked back at Sarah. "Your time will come, be ready for it." After Chen left, Sarah lay back on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. Her body hurt, her pride was wounded, but her determination burned brighter than ever. She thought about her father, who died 2 years ago from cancer. He'd been her hero, her mentor, her biggest supporter. The last thing he'd said to her was, "Show them what Martinez means." She would, but she'd do it smart. The next 3 days were brutal. Training started at 500 with a 4-mile run in soft sand, followed by ocean swims in frigid water, obstacle courses that left everyone bloody and exhausted, and endless physical drills. Sarah pushed herself harder than anyone, determined to prove she belonged. But Dawson and his crew never let up. They accidentally bumped into her during runs, knocked her equipment into the mud, and made crude jokes whenever instructors weren't around. Other cadets watched but said nothing. Fear of association kept them silent. On the fourth day, during a combat training exercise, things escalated. The cadets were paired off for hand-to-hand combat drills. Sarah was matched with Cooper, one of Dawson's crew, a calculated move by someone to humiliate her. Cooper was 6'3" and built like a linebacker. He grinned as they faced each other on the mat. "Try not to get hurt too bad, sweetheart," he said. The instructor, a grizzled senior chief named Petson, blew his whistle. "Begin." Cooper charged like a bull. Sarah sidestepped smoothly, using his momentum against him, and swept his leg. He crashed to the mat with a surprised grunt. The other cadets gasped. Sarah didn't gloat. She simply reset her stance and waited. Cooper's face was red as he got up. "Lucky shot." "Again," Petson said. This time Cooper was more careful, circling Sarah like a predator. He feinted left, then right, looking for an opening. Sarah remained calm, centered, watching his eyes instead of his hands. Her father had taught her that trick. When Cooper finally committed to a grab, Sarah was ready. Part 3. Sarah ducked under Cooper's reach and drove her elbow into his ribs, not hard enough to injure, but enough to make a point. He grunted and swung wildly. She blocked, pivoted, and used a basic judo throw that sent him crashing to the mat again. This time the gasps were louder. Senior Chief Petson's weathered face showed no emotion. Reset. For the third round, Cooper came at Sarah with real anger. He was stronger and had a longer reach, but Sarah was faster and more technical. She'd spent years training in mixed martial arts, not to prove anything, but because her father had insisted she know how to protect herself. Cooper grabbed her arm, trying to muscle her down. Sarah went with the momentum, rolled backward, and used her legs to flip him over her. He landed hard on his back, the wind knocked out of him. "Enough," Petson said. He looked at Sarah with what might have been respect. "Good work, Martinez, next pair." As Sarah walked off the mat, she caught Dawson's eye. He wasn't smiling anymore. Neither were Martinez and Hayes. They just watched their boy get taken down 3 times by the weak little girl they'd thrown to the ground 4 days earlier. In the locker room afterward, Sarah was changing when she heard footsteps. She turned to find Dawson blocking the doorway, alone this time. "That was a nice little show you put on out there," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "It wasn't a show, it was training. You're making us look bad." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "No, you're making yourselves look bad. I'm just trying to get through this program." Dawson stepped closer. "Listen to me very carefully. I don't care how many tricks you know or how tough you think you are. You don't belong here. Women don't belong in the teams, and I'm going to make sure you understand that." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." He leaned in, his voice barely a whisper. "We're going to make your life so miserable that you'll beg to quit, and when you do, everyone will see that we were right all along." Sarah stood her ground, though her heart was racing. "You're scared of me." Dawson laughed. "Scared of you?" "Yes, because if I make it through this program, it proves everything you believe is a lie. It proves you're not special just because you're a man. It proves that maybe, just maybe, you're not as good as you think you are." For a moment she thought he might hit her. His fists clenched, his jaw tight. But then footsteps echoed in the hall and he stepped back. "This isn't over," he said and walked out. Sarah's hands were shaking again. She sat down on the bench and took several deep breaths. She'd stood up to him, but she knew it had made things worse. Men like Dawson didn't back down when challenged. They escalated. That night Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk, thinking about everything that had happened. Part of her wanted to report Dawson and his crew, to tell Commander Chun or Senior Chief Petson about the harassment. But another part, the part that sounded like her father, knew that wouldn't solve anything. It would only make her look weak, like she needed protection. No, she had to handle this herself, but how? The answer came 2 days later, during a navigation exercise in the mountains outside Canada. The cadets were divided into four-person teams and sent into the wilderness with only a map, compass, and basic supplies. The goal was to reach 3 checkpoints over 2 days and return to base. Sarah's team consisted of 3 men she barely knew: Rodriguez, a quiet guy from Chicago; a former college athlete; and Thompson, who'd been friendly but distant. None of them were part of Dawson's crew, but none of them had stood up for her either. They set out at dawn, moving through rough terrain. Sarah took point with the map, using the navigation skills her father had taught her during countless camping trips. The men seemed surprised by her competence but said little. By midday, they'd reached the first checkpoint. As they rested, Rodriguez spoke up. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah looked at him. "Sure." "Why are you really here? Why put yourself through all this?" It was the first time anyone had asked her that question without mockery in their voice. Sarah considered her answer carefully. "My father was a Marine. He served in Iraq, Afghanistan. He came home different, but he never complained. He taught me that service means something, that protecting others is the highest calling." She paused. "When he got sick, when the cancer took him, his last words to me were about finishing what he started, about showing the world what our family stands for." The 3 men were quiet. Finally, spoke. "I'm sorry about your father." "Thank you." "For what it's worth," Thompson added, "what Dawson and those guys are doing to you, it's not right." Sarah met his eyes. "Then why don't you say something?" Thompson looked away. "Because we're all just trying to survive this place. If we stand up for you, we become targets too. So you throw me to the wolves to save yourselves." "I didn't say it was right. I said it's survival." Sarah stood up, shouldering her pack. "My father taught me something else. He said that how you act when it's hard, when it costs you something, that's what defines your character. Everything else is just easy." They continued in silence, reaching the second checkpoint by evening. They made camp in a clearing, taking turns on watch. Sarah volunteered for the midnight shift, needing time alone with her thoughts. She was sitting by the dying fire when she heard branches breaking in the distance. At first, she thought it was an animal, but then she saw flashlights bobbing through the trees. 4 of them. Her heart sank. She knew who it was before they emerged from the darkness. Dawson, Martinez, Cooper, and Hayes stepped into the clearing, their faces illuminated by the firelight. They'd left their own team behind to track her down. "Well, well," Dawson said. "Look who's all alone in the woods. How convenient." Part 4. Sarah stood slowly, her hand moving to the flare gun at her belt, the emergency signal they'd all been issued. But Dawson noticed and shook his head. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. See, we're just 4 guys who got lost and stumbled onto your camp. Nothing sinister about that. But if you fire that flare, you'll have to explain to the instructors why you're wasting resources on a false alarm. Might even get you washed out for poor judgment." He was right, and he knew it. Sarah's mind raced through her options. She could wake her teammates, but they'd already made it clear they wouldn't help her. She could try to fight, but 4 against 1 in the middle of nowhere was suicide. Or she could run, but that would mean abandoning her team and failing the exercise. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We want you to understand something," Martinez said, stepping forward. "We tried to do this the easy way. We gave you chances to leave with some dignity, but you just won't take the hint." Hayes added, "So now we're going to make it real clear." They fanned out, surrounding her. Sarah backed up slowly, keeping the fire between them. "You know what's going to happen here," Dawson said. "We're going to rough you up a bit. Nothing too serious, just enough to make you reconsider your life choices. And when you show up tomorrow with bruises and scrapes, everyone will just think you fell during the night hike. Happens all the time out here. My team will know better." "Your team?" Cooper laughed. Those three in the tents, they won't say a word, they know what's good for them. Sarah's mind flashed back to every lesson her father had taught her, about courage, about honor, about standing your ground even when the odds were impossible. But he'd also taught her about tactics, about using your enemy's weaknesses against them. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. "The only mistake we made was not doing this sooner," Dawson replied. He stepped around the fire, closing the distance. "Last chance, Martinez. Quit now and we'll let you walk away. Stay and you'll regret it." Sarah looked at each of them in turn. Then she smiled, a genuine, confident smile that seemed to confuse them. "No," she said. "Last chance for you. Walk away now and I won't destroy your careers." Dawson laughed. "Destroy our careers? You can't even." He didn't finish the sentence because Sarah pulled out her phone, the one they were all technically supposed to leave behind, but most cadets secretly carried for emergencies, and held it up. The screen glowed in the darkness. "I've been recording since you walked into this clearing," she said. "Every word, every threat, all of it." The four men froze. For the first time since this nightmare began, Sarah saw fear in their eyes. "You're bluffing," Martinez said, but his voice wavered. Sarah tapped the screen and her own voice played back. "What do you want?" Then Dawson's. "We want you to understand something." She stopped the recording. "I'm not bluffing, and it's not just audio. See that tree over there?" She pointed to a tall pine about 20 feet away. "My watch has been recording video since 600 this morning. It's motion-activated, waterproof, and solar-powered. My father gave it to me before he died. He said it might save my life someday." She wasn't entirely lying. The watch did record, though the angle from where she'd positioned it on her pack might not have captured everything. But they didn't need to know that. "Hand it over," Dawson demanded, moving toward her. "It's already uploaded to the cloud," Sarah said. "Automatic backup every hour. You can take the watch, take my phone, but the evidence is already safe. And if anything happens to me out here, anything at all, it automatically sends to Commander Chen, Senior Chief Patterson, and the base commander." It was a complete bluff. The watch didn't have that capability. But in the darkness, with their carefully planned intimidation falling apart, the four men didn't know what to believe. "You're lying," Hayes said, but he sounded uncertain. "Am I? Are you willing to bet your career on that? Because if I'm telling the truth, you're not just looking at getting washed out. You're looking at assault charges, conduct unbecoming, maybe even criminal prosecution. Your SEAL careers would be over before they started. And for what? Because you couldn't handle a woman being as good as you." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah could see them calculating, weighing their options. They'd come here expecting an easy victim. Instead, they'd walked into a trap. "Delete it," Dawson said finally. "Delete the recording and we'll forget this ever happened." "No," Sarah said. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk back to your camp. You're going to leave me and my team alone. You're going to stop the harassment, the intimidation, all of it. And if you do that, if you give me the respect I've earned, then maybe, I'll delete the recordings when we graduate." "And if we don't?" Martinez asked. "Then the day before graduation, when you think you've made it, when you're celebrating becoming SEALs, I'll release everything. Every threat, every insult, every moment you try to break me. And I'll make sure everyone knows that you're not warriors. You're just bullies who couldn't handle the competition." Dawson's face was purple with rage, but he was trapped and he knew it. They all did. "You think you've won," he spat. "You think this is over." "I think you're going to walk away now," Sarah said. "Unless you want to test my bluff, go ahead, try me." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Dawson turned and stalked into the darkness. The other three followed, their flashlights disappearing between the trees. Sarah waited until she couldn't hear them anymore, then her legs finally gave out. She sat down hard, her whole body shaking. She'd gambled everything on a bluff and it had worked, but she knew it wasn't over. Not really. Rodriguez emerged from his tent, followed by Kim and Thompson. They'd been awake the whole time listening. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen," Rodriguez said quietly. "Or the stupidest," Sarah replied, her voice shaking. "The watch recording isn't set up the way I said. I was lying." "We know," Thompson said, "but they didn't, that's what matters." Kim sat down beside her. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Sorry we didn't have your back before. That changes now." Sarah looked at the three men, seeing something in their faces she hadn't seen before: respect. "Thank you," she said, "but this isn't over. Dawson won't let this go." "Then we won't either," Rodriguez said. "From now on, you're not alone in this." The rest of the navigation exercise passed without incident. Sarah's team completed all 3 checkpoints and returned to base ahead of schedule. When they arrived, Senior Chief Patterson was waiting with Commander Chen. "Good work out there," Patterson said, his eyes lingering on Sarah. "All of you." As the other teams filtered in over the next few hours, Sarah noticed that Dawson and his crew looked different. They avoided her eyes, spoke in low voices, and kept to themselves. The shift in power dynamics was subtle but unmistakable. Word spread quickly through the compound. Nobody knew exactly what had happened in the woods, but everyone knew something had changed. Cadets who'd previously ignored Sarah now nodded at her in the halls. Some even struck up conversations. 2 weeks passed. Training intensified as Hell Week approached, the infamous 5.5-day test of endurance that broke most candidates. Sarah threw herself into preparation, running extra miles, doing extra drills, pushing her body to its absolute limit. Dawson and his crew kept their distance, but Sarah could feel their eyes on her. They were waiting for something, planning something. She just didn't know what. The answer came on the first day of Hell Week. At 200, instructors burst into the barracks with bullhorns and blank ammunition, shocking everyone awake. Cadets scrambled outside in the cold darkness, where they were immediately ordered into the ocean. The water was 55 degrees, cold enough to be dangerous. For the next 5 days they would get almost no sleep, no warmth, and no mercy. This was where most people quit. Sarah endured. When her boat crew had to carry a 200-pound inflatable raft on their heads for miles, she carried her share. When they did log PT, exercises with massive telephone poles, she pulled her weight. When other cadets quit, ringing the bell that signaled their surrender, Sarah kept going. On the 3rd day, during a particularly brutal surf torture session where they had to lie in the freezing water for hours, Sarah found herself next to Rodriguez. "How you holding up?" he asked through chattering teeth. "Living the dream," she said, managing a smile. Martinez, an instructor, shouted, "On your feet." Sarah stood, water streaming from her clothes. The instructor, a senior chief she didn't recognize, pointed to a group of officers standing on the beach. Commander Chen was there, along with several others. "You've got visitors," the instructor said. Confused and exhausted, Sarah jogged over. Chen was smiling, actually smiling. "Cadet Martinez, I'd like you to meet Rear Admiral Catherine Morrison." Sarah's eyes widened. Admiral Morrison was a legend, the first woman to reach flag rank in naval special warfare. She'd broken every barrier, fought every battle, and paved the way for women like Sarah. "At ease, Cadet," Morrison said. She was in her 50s, with gray hair and eyes that had seen everything. "I've been hearing things about you." "Ma'am, Commander Chen has been keeping me updated on your progress. More importantly, she told me about a certain incident in the mountains 2 weeks ago." Sarah's heart sank. "Ma'am, I can explain." Morrison held up her hand. "You don't need to explain. You need to know that we've been investigating Dawson, Martinez, Cooper, and Hayes for the past week. Turns out, your watch actually did capture some footage, enough to corroborate your account. And when we started digging, we found a pattern. They've been harassing female candidates for years, using intimidation and threats to force them out." Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. As of this morning, Morrison continued, all 4 of them have been removed from the program and are facing disciplinary action. They won't be SEALs. They won't be in the Navy. They're done. I don't know what to say. Say you're going to finish this program. Say you're going to become the first woman to earn that trident. Say you're going to prove that courage isn't about gender, it's about heart. Sarah straightened despite her exhaustion. Yes, ma'am, that's exactly what I'm going to say. Morrison smiled. Good, because we're watching, Martinez. The whole community is watching, and we're rooting for you. 2 days later, Hell Week ended. Sarah was one of only 32 cadets who didn't quit. As she stood on the beach, covered in sand and salt, exhausted beyond measure, Senior Chief Patterson approached. Congratulations, Martinez. You survived. Thank you, Senior Chief. Your father would be proud. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, the first she'd allowed herself to cry since arriving. How did you know about my father? Commander Chen told me, and she also told me what he said to you before he died. Patterson's gruff expression softened slightly. Show them what Martinez means. Well, I'd say you've done that and then some. 3 months later, Sarah stood in formation with her graduating class. They'd started with 60 cadets. Only 24 remained. As each graduate received their SEAL trident, the special warfare insignia that marked them as part of the elite, Sarah thought about her father. She thought about the little girl in Texas who'd learned to shoot, to fight, to never back down. She thought about the teenager who'd watched her father deploy again and again, knowing he might not come home. She thought about the woman who'd held his hand as cancer took him, listening to his final words. Show them what Martinez means. When her name was called, Sarah walked forward. Admiral Morrison herself pinned the trident to her uniform. Welcome to the teams, Petty Officer Martinez, Morrison said quietly. You earned this. Sarah saluted. Thank you, ma'am, for everything. That evening, there was a small ceremony at the compound. Families had been invited, but Sarah had no one. Her mother had died when she was young and her father was gone. She stood alone, watching other graduates celebrate with their loved ones. Then Commander Chen appeared, carrying a folder. Martinez, there's someone who wants to speak with you. Chen opened the folder and pulled out a letter. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. Sarah's breath caught. Your father gave this to me 6 months before he died, Chen said. He asked me to deliver it if you made it through the program. With trembling hands, Sarah took the letter. She read, My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, you did it. You became a SEAL. I knew you would. I always knew. When you were 5 years old, you fell off your bike and scraped your knee so bad you needed stitches. You didn't cry. You got up, looked at the blood, and said, That's not so bad. That's when I knew you were special. The world will try to tell you that you're not strong enough, not tough enough, not good enough. But I'm telling you now, you are enough. You've always been enough. Show them what Martinez means. Show them that honor, courage, and commitment aren't about what's on the outside. They're about what's in here. He'd drawn an arrow pointing to where a heart would be. I'm so proud of you, Mija, and I'll be watching over you always. Love, Dad. Sarah folded the letter carefully, tears streaming down her face. Around her, the celebration continued, but she felt a profound sense of peace. She'd been thrown down, mocked, underestimated, and threatened, but she'd gotten back up. She'd stood her ground. She'd earned her place. And in doing so, she'd shown everyone exactly what Martinez meant. Years later, when people asked her about becoming the first female Navy SEAL, Sarah always told them about her father's letter. About the moment she realized that the journey had never been about proving others wrong. It had been about proving herself right, about honoring the legacy of a good man who'd believed in her when no one else did. Food's on the table, Dawson had said that first day, trying to put her in her place. But Sarah had set her own table. She'd earned her own seat, and now she was serving something far more important than food. She was serving her country with honor and pride as a United States Navy SEAL.